My name is Sheryl Shaffer, and welcome to another episode in the Veterans Helping Veterans TV series. Today's guest is Louis Bickford, and he's from the Veterans of Foreign Wars here in California, and he has a very unusual position within the VFW. Can you tell us what you do?
Yes, I'm chairman of the Native American Veteran Affairs within the VFW. It's the only one in the nation. It was created, I'd like to believe, because my wife and I have been field service officers at large for the Native American veterans of the VFW for the past 6 years, and proved to the organization that there was a real need within this specific community.
Louis, can you tell me a little bit about your background? I do know that you were in the Navy and you're a Vietnam combat veteran. Because of that experience, I know earlier you were telling me that you went to a veteran service officer where you lived in your community to file for a service-connected disability, and how did they help you?
Well, the whole thing, I realized the whole thing boiled down to is that I had to find and provide all the evidence, substantiate my claim, and they just fill out the paperwork and send it in. So because my wife and I decided this is a full-time job, we'd lost our business, I couldn't work anymore, we sat down and said, okay, we're going to do this every day, and we're going to teach ourselves everything there is to know about the service officer work and the claims, and primarily the claims and pensions part of the VBA.
Now, how long did it take you from the time you initially applied, or from the time you initially applied for your service-connected disability rating to the time you got your disability rating? How long did that time take?
It's quite a long time ago, but I believe it took almost 2.5 years.
And see, that really is the big issue here. It's taken the VA way too long to process these claims for service-connected disability rating. So let's get back to why it is important for veterans to understand what a service officer does. Can you tell me?
A service officer, at least with our case within the First Nations Veteran Service Organization, we're all volunteers. Mm-hmm. We're all trained to be able to not only sit and talk to a veteran and help him fill out his paperwork for compensation or pension. Compensation, we say compensation, not disability, because the government's really awarding what happened to you in the service, that you have a disability today. They're compensating you for that. And the veteran is much easier with that term than disability. He doesn't feel like he's on the dole. He's actually getting compensated. So that works much better.
Okay. Why is it that the Native American veteran population seems to be underserved?
Well, a few statistics about that. Even Secretary of VA, Shinseki, came out last year and sent a memo out to all VA in the country that the Native American veteran, we serve 7 times more than any other ethnic group per capita, and we're least served by the VA. And that was put out by the VA itself. So now we have a wonderful opportunity to work with the VA and lead them into Indian country, because they are from the government, mm-hmm. and they're not always openly welcome.
Oh, well, that's understandable considering the history and all, but it's really, the purpose of this program is to help educate veterans about their benefits, why they need to enroll, why it's important for not just Native American veterans, but all veterans, really, to understand the key to applying for your benefits. Don't let, my previous job was where I'm retired from the California mm-hmm. Employment Development Department as a vet rep. And many of the veterans that came into our office for services would always tell me this phrase, well, I didn't know. Well, I didn't know. Well, that's the whole purpose.
Our biggest job is education.
That's the key, education.
We've got to educate the veterans in what their benefits are. And we do this through not only education on their benefits, but we help them with the educational benefits. We even help them with Social Security. We help them with anything it takes to get that veteran and his family, because it's the family that will help us to help the veteran. So within our culture, the family is the key. It's the core. So if we can educate them about their benefits, no matter what it is, whether it's VA, Social Security, county help, whatever, we're like an inclusive place for them to come for information and guidance.
And part of what you're doing is not just educating the population, you actually are empowering them because you are teaching them to become service officers on the reservation.
Right. We have several programs. One of them is that through our work with the VFW, through our work with CalVet, we're actually able to go out and train veteran service officers within the tribes. So they themselves, which, and first we have to realize and recognize that those tribes are sovereign nations. They're above the state. They're an equal part of the federal government.
And really, let's digress just a little
Sure.
bit here, and really explain to me what that really means, so the audience out there truly understands what you're saying.
A tribal veteran representative?
No.
I'm sorry.
The nations.
The nations. The federal recognized tribes in the United States actually have treaties with the United States government, just like Germany or France or any other foreign power. They're on the same level as those. When you actually walk across that reservation line, you actually should have a passport because you're walking into a foreign country. It's really is self-ruling, and we've worked on that for many years for that to be recognized of what we are.
Well, that was the trade-off.
Yes.
I mean, if that was the trade-off.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes, yeah.
Getting back to the problems that are facing this generation of veterans, can you talk about how that impacts Native American veterans? There's so many issues facing the veterans.
Exactly.
Especially
I'm trying to figure out where you would even start.
I'm thinking, because I'm a retired EDD vet rep, and my
Right.
job was getting jobs for veterans,
Right.
that I'm assuming the unemployment rate is higher in the Native American population than it is for everyone else.
Well, and that's a good reason probably why we joined the military. It's like myself, it's like I'm out of high school. I'm from South Dakota. I wasn't going to college. I didn't have any money. I got married at a young age, and I was cleaning barns for $30 a week, and I needed to get out, so I joined the Navy. I joined the Navy for 6 years to get an education, and I stayed for 12, and that education supported me the rest of my life. So a lot of the problems is that the jobless rate on the reservations is like 35%, and it's a way for us to improve ourselves. The other thing is that most tribes, not all, but most tribes have a warrior society, which when we came back from Vietnam, we were honored by our tribes. Was not the case for your normal returnee from Vietnam, as you know.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we've always celebrated. We always honor our veterans. Every powwow, the veterans are honored first. The veterans, for us, come before everything else. They're our honored warriors.
That says it all right there. So, how do we solve these problems? And we do this with collaborations and partnerships?
Exactly. We formed, there's 5 of us on the board of directors of First Nations Veteran Service Organization. We're all Native American veterans. And most of us also belong to VFW. So we were able to go to the VFW with a program where we would have a memo of understanding with them so that we could actually train Native American veterans to be service officers. Whether they're qualified for the VFW or not was irrelevant as long as we trained them and we were responsible and supervised. Then the VFW would process their claims all the way to Washington, D.C. A very unique program within any service organization.
How many service officers do you have now?
Right now we have 15 service officers.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we've just begun our program within the state of California with our partnership with CalVet, or CDVA. We took on the role of training tribal veteran representatives within the recognized tribes of California, which is 111 recognized tribes. We also are training at-large veteran service officers who are at large, because the at-large population in California of Native Americans who are related to tribes elsewhere, like myself, are huge in California. We have the largest population of Native Americans. We have the highest population of Native American veterans in California. 1/5 of all the tribes in the United States are in California.
Wow, I did not know that.
There's a huge, huge need here.
So, how do we persuade this generation of veterans to get involved? How do we tell them, you know, this is really for your benefit? How do you do that, Louis?
You know, in the years we've been doing this, we have found what works the best is not us personally going out and sitting with a veteran at a powwow. We snagged him as he walked by, and actually have our traveling service office right there. We need to go beyond that. By going beyond that, we are training other people in their communities to be service officers. And the recognized tribes, we have a program there where that tribal veteran representative is a veteran that has been selected by the tribal council, represents his people with the VA, okay? And we are empowering him to be able to go talk to his cousins on the res and off the res, because he knows where they are and who they are and who's got the problems and who's got the domestic violence because of PTSD, or who's hiding in the hills and isolated because of PTSD. Unfortunately, 3/4 of all the claims we've done over 500 claims, I would say 80% of those are PTSD related.
Wow. And that doesn't surprise me, because war changes you no matter what.
It does. You know, I was trained by a social worker within the VA, Pat Noonan. She's a sweetheart, and she says, you know, here's the thing. You have to remember when you're working with other vets, because she was my counselor, is that anyone who's seen combat is changed. You know, so all of us have PTSD to some extent.
That's really true.
It
It's
is.
just an abnormal reaction
right.
to,
and of course, like with mental health issues, we think it's our problem and only our problem. Nobody else has it. So when I go out and train, I'm sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, you did. And that really brings up a good point, because a lot of the veterans isolate themselves.
Yes.
And they do that because they honestly feel no one else can understand what happened to them. And that really is what makes you such a terrific service officer, because you have been there yourself.
Exactly.
And you can relate. You can relate to what they're telling you.
Exactly. And you know, and vet to vet, you pick up on that right away. You know, so my advantage in doing this, or heading this effort, is that I am a Native American. I belong to the Little Sheryl tribe. I'm Chippewa from Montana. I'm a combat vet. I'm from Vietnam. I'm 100% disabled. 70% of that's PTSD. So when I sit down and talk to you, and I start off right, this is who I am. You know, I don't care where you served. Same stuff, different place. We've got the same problems. We're brothers in combat. And so each one of those allows me to go across another step to be able to sit down and talk to that Native American veteran. I'm not from the government, and I am a Native brother, and I am a veteran with them.
So even though you're trying to give them federal services, because the VA is a federal agency,
exactly,
like we talked about before, Native American Indians don't necessarily trust the federal government.
Yes.
So in these positions, what is your goal? Is to have how many, ideally, best case scenario, how many Indian vet reps would you like to have, Native American vet reps throughout the state?
One program, through what?
Throughout the state of California.
State of California. Okay, state of California, because we're a national organization as well. And, but, you know, our core goal right now is California, because the huge problems that are not being addressed. There's 111 federally recognized tribes. It would be nice if we had 222, 2 for each tribe, that are trained veteran service officers.
Now, when you are looking for these 220 people to help their fellow veteran apply for these, are these paid positions?
No, it's all volunteer.
Okay, and that really is something we have to stress. First Nations is a VSO, and that's a veteran service organization.
Right.
And all veteran service organizations are comprised of veterans, obviously,
Right.
who volunteer their time, talent, money, efforts, whatever it is, to achieve the goals of the VFW or the AMVETS or the DAV, whatever post. So it's volunteer. So you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, basically.
Well, you know,
It's a payback. It's a pay forward.
Yeah, pay forward's good. I'm 100% disabled veteran. I'm giving back to my fellow veterans. I've been through it. I've been through the process. I know how much it means to be financially stable and have the medical care. And if you're 100% disabled, you also have medical care for your dependents.
And that, see, that's information that people don't get. And that in itself, that the dependents also have it, most people don't know that.
Right, but you have to be 100%.
That's the key.
Yeah, that's the key.
So there are various degrees of disability service connected from a minimum of 0%, 10%, all the way up to 100%.
Right.
So the idea is inform, educate, and motivate the veteran to learn about their benefits and to apply for them. Because we all know what happens over time.
Oh, yes.
The way the federal government works is they plan the budgets years in advance, or 2-3 years in advance, based on previous year's usage. So if we don't have people enrolling in the VA system like they should, that's reduced money.
And that's another thing that I use, okay? So if I'm talking to somebody who's maybe older, for instance, in the older generation, I don't want anything, I don't need anything, I don't want anything from the government, I explain to them, for every one of us that fills out a claim and uses the service, this is a government department, right? So every time they use up all their money and need a little more, their budget increases. And when it increases, we have programs for our kids coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan.
And that
so if you don't want to help yourself, step up, be recognized so you can help the kids.
And that's the key.
That's the key.
Absolutely. That
Vets
is
helping
the
vets.
key. Vets helping veterans. Because I don't know about you, but I went to college on the GI Bill. I bought my first house on the GI Bill, CalVet loan, all that. So it's like previous generations of veterans thought enough of the future generations of veterans to enact legislation on our behalf. And that's the other secret power of these groups. American Legion, DAV, VFW, AMVET, is they enact legislation on behalf of veterans. So part of what we're doing here, this is a call to action to Native American veterans.
It is. You know, it's we're creating an opportunity for them to help their community. And they help their community by helping themselves first. Because everyone that I've signed up as a service officer, we did a claim for. Because they needed help just as bad as their brothers and sisters in arms. You know, and so the best way to train them is they work their own claims with our supervision. This is how it's done. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to find. And then they can work within their own community. But at the same time, they're never left alone. I mean, I call all of them repeatedly, and they call me. Well, you know, I've got Uncle so-and-so here. You know, he's a Korean vet, you know, and he's got this going on, this going on. I'm not quite sure, you know. Well, you know, let me give you some guidance and some help. This is how to approach it, and this is how to approach him. Because he's from a different war than maybe the SO is. You know, so here's things I've learned along the way.
Well, I would like to talk about, going to just shift the focus a little bit from Indian vet reps to some of the other services that you provide, like health centers.
Well, we've got a program. Another one of our programs with the First Nations is that we reach out to the Indian health centers, and they've wherever we've approached them, they have offered space, computers, office space for the Native American community who's going to be a service officer to invite them in, which is what is a perfect place for those people to meet the veterans of the community who come in for medical problems. So you've got somebody coming in with mental health issues. You've got somebody there for him to talk to who is a Native American vet from their own tribal community. You know, California has an unusual situation. All of the Indian health centers in California are actually all tribal owned. They're not run by Indian Health Service from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Each one is tribal owned, and then they have a relationship with Indian Health Services. In fact, just one step beyond that is we're just about to get signed an agreement between the VA and the Indian Health Service throughout the United States to be able to bill the VA for the Indian Health Service to treat the veteran, and then they can turn around and do billing lists like they do for Medicare and for Social Security, and they can bill the VA for it. So now that veteran can get treatment within his own community where he wants to go.
Instead of having to drive to VA hospital.
Which is sometimes, Northern California,
away,
especially
yeah.
4 or 5 hours away. When he's got an Indian health, he's got a tribal clinic that their tribe supports in the area, which are their own people. So that community thing comes back in within the culture.
So everything that we're trying to do everything that First Nations is trying to do is to teach the Native American veteran reps to become self-sufficient.
Yes.
To learn to do it yourself.
Yes.
That way you can teach other people to do it. And ever-widening circle of influence.
Exactly.
So don't let the system beat you down before you even know how the system works, right?
Exactly. And don't forget, we create that support system so they've got somebody to lean on when they need to, or they get frustrated. They got somebody to call, somebody to talk to. Because more senior service officers, eventually that support system will spread out. So they've got somebody within, say, Northern Cali or Southern California, Central California, that will be a senior service officer, Native Americans, that they can relate to, that have more experience. So we're trying to build this so that eventually we work ourselves out of a job.
No, that would be wonderful.
But if every veteran knows his benefits and has somebody to go to, they don't need us. Unfortunately, that's going to take forever. But it's a goal. It's a goal. You got to have a goal.
You got to have a goal,
right.
Because unfortunately we know that the VA takes kind of a long time to process these claims, and
yes.
sometimes something that should really take 6 months takes a couple of years.
Yes.
It's unfortunate it's that way, but that is the way it is. So an average processing time, if someone comes to you and says, Louie, help me process this claim, it might take anywhere from 1.5 years to 2 years before you actually
receive a decision.
Yeah.
Right. So, every service officer we teach, they're invested in that veteran. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's why it's so important to get these service officers or tribal veteran representatives into their communities, because they're there day in, day out. They may be sitting at breakfast talking to somebody that they know. They're the ones who know the problems in the community. They're the ones that can help them one-on-one.
And they're the ones that are helping hundreds of veterans filing for claims. So
Exactly.
It's not like you have one veteran and you're waiting 2 years for the paperwork.
No.
You got one veteran comes in, files the paperwork,
Right.
and then somebody else is coming in.
Exactly.
So you're dealing with hundreds of people.
It's hundreds of people that you're invested for 2 years, and it's a situation, hopefully it's not the same all over the country, but this is what we have in California.
So now, we keep coming up with a theme of volunteering and making a difference in the community, and nowhere is that more needed than the Native American.
True.
So, this is why First Nations was started?
This is why we formed First Nations. We formed First Nations because we realized that there's so many veterans, you can't help them all. And that the veteran service organization like the VFW, the AMVETS, DAV, and many others already out there with service officers, but none of them are addressing the Native American population. None of them. So we fell into a void. Just in my own background, and we started out by going out doing outreach to powwows. We did this for several years. At the powwows, before the elders of the communities finally said, these guys are going to stick around. Maybe I'll go talk to them. They come talk to us. The elders did. Next thing you knew, they were sending people over to us. So we had to earn their respect and show that we were part of their community, and we were there for the long term, for the long haul. And that wasn't just BS, And then when you start having claims come in for people and they're actually getting something in return from what we were working with them for, got what was due them, then they go, oh, this does work. It isn't just a story or an organization out there with a booth trying to sell you something.
Louis, if someone would like to contact you, can you give us your phone number?
Sure. It's 209-878-3369.
Okay, the program is just about over here, so I want to go back to encouraging people to volunteer, get involved in your community. The government cannot take care of us. We have to take care of ourselves.
That's right.
So, thank you to the veterans of foreign wars for what you're doing for us.
Absolutely. Without them, we wouldn't be able to complete the circle of having the vet, training the vets, and having the claims being processed by a charter service organization all the way to Washington, D.C.
Well, because we're veterans helping veterans.
That's right.
And no one does more for the vets than the veterans
That's
of
correct.
foreign wars.
Well, thank you. And we are the combat vets, you know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for everything you're doing. And
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Been a pleasure, really. Can't say enough about joining a veteran service organization. It is the key to all the benefits we have as veterans.
Any organization.
Any organization.
They're all important.
Get involved in your community.
That's right.
Make a difference in your life
Yep.
by helping others.
Exactly.